Hey guys, I'm Cody, and in this video I want to be talking about how to build tic-tac-toe using JavaScript. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you on the left, we have three files already created. We have index.html, which basically loads in a style sheet, which we can add to style our tic-tac-toe board. And then in the body, we have three scripts that are including Lodash, jQuery, and then of course we have an app.js file, which is where we're going to write our tic-tac-toe code. Two things I'll mention is that I'm using what am I using? I'm using HTTP-server for hosting my actual file system, or that folder you see where it says tic-tac-toe. So when I run this, it's going to host my application at port 8080 here. So now I can refresh and get my actual app here. And then additionally, on my other terminal, I'm running I'm running live reload, which basically whenever I make a change to my index file, my JavaScript file, or my style sheet, it's going to refresh my browser. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to build out a 3x3 grid, because that's what a tic-tac-toe has, right? It's a 3x3 grid. So let's go ahead and create that using divs. So I'll say div class equals to row, and I'll make 3 of these bad boys. And inside here we can say div class is equal to column, and I'll just go ahead and assign them x's so we can actually visualize what it looks like. So I'll save the file. We see that we get a bunch of x's here. Change one of those to o's just so you know, get a better understanding. So notice that these are all vertically stacked, so we need to go into here into our style sheet. And first of all, let's go ahead and remove any of the margin on our body. So margin 0 pixels, margin top, go ahead and say 10 pixels. And then for our row, we might not even add anything, but I'll have it there just in case. Our column, though, we need to set that to display inline block, so that will allow them to be stacked the correct 3x3 grid that we're looking for. We can go ahead and set a explicit width and height on our grid cells. Let's go ahead and add text align center so that they're all centered, or all the text is centered. I'm going to go ahead and change the background of the body to something else. So I'll say orange. Change the background of the columns to, let's say, white, so we can visualize this better. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of margin top between these so we can see the grids. And then finally, let's see, we can probably add some padding top. Actually, no, let's just change font size to 40 pixels. We can text align this, so that's centered in the center here. That's a little bit too big. And then finally, say padding 20 pixels. Make the font size a little bit bigger. Padding top 30 pixels. Kind of just messing around with this. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I think we can stick with this. And additionally, let's go ahead and add another section. So I'll add a div here, and I'll say button. We'll name this ID restart. Go ahead and give that restart inside the text. Go ahead and style the buttons a little bit so that it looks a little bit better. So we can add some padding to that. We can add some font size of that so it's a little bit larger to read, and then add some margin on the top. Maybe not that much margin. Okay. So cool. We have a tic-tac-toe board, 3x3, with the restart button at the bottom. We're probably going to need some other areas that we can display, like you've won or you lost. We can add that in later. So what we need to do now is actually start writing some code in which we start with a blank board, and then the player is the first one to go, so they can click on one of these cells of the grid to place their token, which is going to be X. So to do that in code, let's first go back to the HTML and just remove those placeholder values. And then let's go to our JavaScript. using jQuery, like when the document's finished loading, we can call a function. And then in this function, we want to declare a grid, which is going to have our 9x9 or 3x3 grid with blank spots in it. And then finally, we want to add some type of binding on those columns so that when we click them, we change the HTML equal to, let's say, player token. Let's just go ahead and make one called computer token as well. So now when I save this file, I should be able to go over here, and when I click on these, it's putting X inside these cells. So that's step one to this whole process. And then additionally, we need to figure out which grid to put that token into. So it might help to put a little metadata on our columns. So we can do data I is equal to 0, data J is equal to 0 as well. Now there's probably other ways to do this, but this is the first way that comes to my head. So let's just go ahead and do it this way. And basically I is always for the row. So for the first row it's 0. And the J is usually representing of the column. So we'll say 0, 1, 2. And then same thing, change this to 1, change this all to 2, change this to 0, 1, 2, and then also 0, 1, 2. Go ahead and save that. So what that allows us to do when you use data hyphen something in your HTML, basically you can use JavaScript or jQuery to grab that data attribute and then use it in your code. So in this case, what we want to do is say const I is equal to this.data.I, because remember that I character is saved in this data here. And then going back, we can say const J is equal to this.data.j. I'll go ahead and just bring this out to another variable so I'm not repeating code multiple times. And then finally we can say grid I, J is equal to player token. Go ahead and save that. Also print out grid just to verify that this is doing what we expect it to do. So I click the first 0, 0 index, we go to array and set there. We click this one, should be the last row, and then in the middle. So that's working cool. So the next step is after you place a token, you want to run the computer or the AI to figure out where to place its token. And additionally, you should check to see if you won before you do any of that. So we place our token here. And then you can also check, is game over? So up here, I'll go ahead and write a function called is game over. And then if it is, we can do some logic. Otherwise, we need to move the AI or the computer. And then we also need to check after the player moves. We'll probably change this or refactor this, so I'll just go ahead and leave this as is. So first of all, how do you check if the game is over? Well, you want to check if there's, horizontal 3 in a row, diagonal 3 in a row, or vertical 3 in a row. So to start off, we can do, let's just check the horizontal. So we can do var I is equal to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. All right, so we need to keep changing the rows. But in this case, we can say if grid I 0 is not equal to an empty space, and grid I 0 is equal to grid I1, so therefore we're checking if this one is equal to this one, And then again, we want to check if the second one, or the first one is also equal to the second one. So basically we're checking if all three of these are the same. And again, there's probably a different way to do this, but this is, again, one of the first ways that comes to my head. So we can say, yes, the game is over, and then I also want to return who won. So I'll do the same thing for vertical. So I'll say check vertical, check horizontal. In this case, I'll change this to J. This will stay the same. This changes to J. So again, instead of checking 3 across, we check 3 down, and we change the J value each iteration. Now the last ones is we need to check diagonal. Top, left, bottom, right. And the other one is check diagonal, bottom left, top right. So in this case, top left to bottom right is 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, or 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. So we don't even need a for loop here, technically. We could just say if grid 0, 0 is not equal to empty space, and 0, 0 is equal to 1, 1, and 0, 0 is equal to 2, 2, we can return 0, 0 because that's the winner. And then for the other one, we could do the same thing, except for instead of 2, 2, it's, or 0, 0, it's going to be 0, 2. And then we'll check 1, 1, and then we'll also check 0. 2, 0. Let me just double check it doesn't right. So first row, sorry, I messed it up. So 2, very bottom row, first column. Kind of had a little dyslexic moment, or swap that up in my head. So second row, first column. So this is row 2, first column. Check that against first row, first column, and then check that against 0 row, second column. And then if none of that passes, just go ahead and return false. Actually, there's one more thing we need to check, right? So we need to check if the board is empty or not. Is there another space left on the board? So to do this, we can do a double for loop. We can say empty equals true. And if grid I, j is equal to an empty space, empty is equal to false, and just return false, otherwise return null. So basically, if we find any empty space, let's just go ahead and return false here, and then because the game's not over, and then otherwise it'll just return null or an empty string if there is no winner. So we have this big function, there's all this complicated logic, should work fine. I guess we can go ahead and try to test it out some, or we just go straight to coding the AI. So let's just go ahead and code the AI. So is game over is going to be called. If it's not over, we need to move the AI. So let's go ahead and write another function called move AI. And basically, we're going to write a really simple AI which just picks the best spot that it can. But we'll start off for now, just pick a random spot that's empty. So we can say, give me the empty spots. Actually, if it is empty, we could just return. It is going to be a super basic AI, which does the most dumbest thing in the world. So basically, we have move AI, which loops through everything in the grid, finds anything that's empty. When it finds something empty, it's going to return the I and j location, which we can then use to set the grid and say move I, move j is equal to computer token. And again, we can check, is game over? If it is, we can just print out to the console or alert, game over. Change that to game state here. So if game state is not equal to that, and should it ever return an empty string? I don't think it will. So basically, if game state is something true, we know the game's over, and we can print out who won by just printing out game state. I need to do the same thing up here. So right now this is super prototype. I could probably refactor this to make it a lot better, but let's go ahead and see if it actually works. So when I click on a spot, oops, defined this twice. Let me get rid of that. So when I click on X, the computer should have moved. It didn't. Let's go ahead and see why it didn't move. Go ahead and put a debugger statement there. So let's see, it's going to go into, where's my stepper? Go ahead and step into that move statement, like so. We go here, incrementing I, incrementing j, testing the grid. Is there empty space anywhere? Yes, there's a ton of empty spaces. So this should return an I and a j. So I'll go back. It says the move is 0, 1. It says the grid. Oh, I know why. I didn't update the HTML. All right, so going back, I just forgot to update this section. All right, so this one we have to go a little bit backwards. We need to check the call that has, or we need to use jQuery to get the column which has data I equal to move.I. And then also has data j equal to move.j. Not 100% sure if this is the way you do it. Let's go ahead and see. To look this up, jQuery selector, multiple attributes. Okay. So yeah, I just needed to add a extra curly bracket like that. Refresh the page. So we see here the AI is just super dumb. It's just going to add a Y wherever it can. And then we won because we did a from bottom to top diagonal game over X. And that is Y. And then we can go ahead and add another function called reset. So if we were to click the restart button, so say restart dot click, pass a callback function. What we need to do is reset the grid. So remember, grid's up here. What we could do is just reset it to that. In fact, I don't like just rewriting it, so instead let's just do another for loop over them and just reset every spot back to what it was before. So grid I and j is equal to the empty space. So now if I were to do this, we won, restart, and I also forgot to do that same logic where we have to go through and reset all those equal to the empty string. But let's see if I move. Cool. So we'll just test it to make sure the computer can win. All right, so hopefully that all made sense. There's a lot of stuff we can do to clean up this code, in which we'll probably do in another video, because I do want to get to using more complicated AI, such as min-max. So what we used is very rudimentary. It just pretty much selects the first open space that it finds, going from left to right, top to bottom. And then also, we spent some time thinking about if there's a better way to do this logic. But for the most part, I mean, if it's not too bad to read, I guess there's no really reason to refactor it. But this is just kind of to show you how to make tic-tac-toe in a short amount of time using JavaScript and HTML5. Again, this isn't a super polished game right now. I'm not planning to polish it up. But hopefully you got a good understanding of how to code that up quite quickly. Stay tuned for the next video where I might be talking about how to increase the AI to make it a lot more advanced. And I'll probably refactor some of the code. All right, thanks for watching.